Hello. Welcome to episode number 2 of Quilting on Caffeine, the one where we talk about modern quilting. What is it? We'll find out. My name is Christine. I am found over on Instagram as @modernlittleme or occasionally blogging at www.modernlittle.me. Let's dive in. Today I am drinking my favorite coffee. It's from a little roaster over in Riverside, Rhode Island, Borealis Coffee Roasters, and it is Team Crafty. I like it for the name, obviously, but it's actually not at all related to crafts as we think of crafts, but craft services as you think of the people who provide the actors and crew on TV, movie sets, all that, the goods. It's actually a fun little story. Maybe I'll link to it down below. But it's delicious. I like my coffee black. That's my preferred. So a really good coffee black is just perfect. And my mug of the day kind of sums it up. I think it might be backwards for you guys, but it says create. Infamous Ray Dunn font. Should we start? So after my first vlog where I said that I was a modern quilter, I got the question a couple times, well, what exactly is modern quilting? And I went, that's a good question. So first up, modern quilting. What is it? That's the question that I struggle to answer. How's that? It's one of those things that you know it when you see it. I can look at quilts and go, oh, that's traditional, that's transitional, and oh, that's modern. And sometimes the lines blur between modern and transitional, like the transitional quilt is a little edgier than what we consider transitional. But there are a few factors that I think really define modern quilting. The first one is that we make quilts to be functional. Modern quilters make quilts that are going to be used. They're not going to be packed away. They're not going to be heirlooms necessarily, while they will hopefully live on in their families or in their lives for generations, or at least a generation. We don't make it to be passed down. Satin cedar chest, which isn't actually very good for them, put in a chest and not utilized. There are plenty of modern quilters who make show quilts or working quilts where they go on tours or trunk shows, or they are used in teaching lessons or techniques or any of that sort of stuff. But we don't. We also make a lot of quilts just to be used. So that's the first thing. I think that it's using them. They're meant to be functional. A lot of modern quilts are inspired by design trends in other industries such as fashion, home design, as well as just what's generally happening in the quilting world. I think that modern quilting draws from the world around us and not so much the history of quilting. Old colors and prints. I think that we don't use a lot of, again, it's one of those things that, oh, that's traditional, that's modern. We use very contemporary colors, we use bright colors, or we use palettes that are very muted. I think that it can range the gap. We like to use a lot of solids, but we like it to be a color for color's sake, I think. Again, we're drawing on what's going on in home design, what's going on in fashion design, and we're bringing that into the quilting world. There's I have a list. Can you tell? The actual layout of the quilt is also, I think, what sets traditional quilts on one page and modern quilts on another page. Traditional quilts tend to be either a repetitive block or a plan that is continual throughout the whole quilt. And I'm not saying that modern quilts can't do that too. Plenty of them do. Plenty of them have repeat blocks, but they're using, or they have traditional blocks that are throughout the whole entire quilt. But that's the quilts that are playing on the bold colors and the bolder prints, and the fabric choices tend to be modern versus what comes to mind is reproduction prints. We don't use those reproduction little ditzy prints in the muted greens and blues and reds. We might do a block that's a very traditional block, but do it in pink and orange with a black background maybe, and not a white background or an off-white background. But a lot of modern quilters, and when you look at modern quilters overall, be it in a magazine or at a quilt show, which I'll go to in a minute, the design of the quilt as a whole tends to be a lot of negative space, a lot of alternative grid work. We're not laying it out, you know, a 3x3 grid, or we might be doing a 3x3 grid, but we're leaving a block blank, or we're doing something different with that block. We're playing on the block, we're squishing it to the side. We'd use, well, I tend to use a lot of negative space in my quilts. And I tend to use a lot of asymmetry in my quilt, which will sometimes drive the recipients, my sister, nuts. Because there'll be like a very intricate block, but it's off on the side. So when you fold it up, you're folding it in half or something. And you can't, you know, so that drives her nuts, which is great. And I'm like, oh, it's off balance. I love it. Sorry, sis. And then there's the rules of modern quilting. There are no rules. Maybe that's why I like it so much. No rules. I think traditional quilters tend to pass on a lot of what they've learned. You never press your seams open. You press to the dark side, or you press to the light. Like, there's a lot of tips, techniques, and tricks that they use that modern quilters also use, but at the end of the day, I think modern quilters are like, just do it, as Nike would say. Just jump in and get it done. There's not really rules of construction. Sometimes you throw it together for better or for worse, and it doesn't work as well as it could have. But I think we tend to jump in and just start a quilt and then figure out what we want to do and how we want to piece it together. And there's not always a correct way to do that, or the only way to do that. I think there's a lot more freedom of construction in modern quilts. And there's also a lot more of what we call, you know, size and scale. I guess that would be back to kind of asymmetry and all of that sort of stuff. But we play with size and scale. We play with improv, which is going to be a whole different vlog because I can't even start on that path. But that's a big part of modern quilting too. But I don't think that I am not an improv quilter. I think it's a big part, and I think it's a very freeing part, and that's why it needs its own vlog, because So anyway, that's what modern quilting is to me. I was gonna have pictures pop up as I was talking about it, and then I decided that was too much editing. I'm not quite there on the editing side of things, so what I'm going to do is actually do a blog post. I'm actually going to post a blog and put pictures in there talking about the points that I made here, as well as some other ones that I see I forgot, like the use of typography or iconography in quilts, and the use of curves, which, again, that needs to be a whole nother vlog, because that's my goal for the year, is to embrace curves in quilting. But so that's modern quilting, right? Function first, inspired by other industries. Bold prints, bold colors, or very muted but saturated colors. I don't think a lot of modern quilters toe the line on what they're going to do in terms of patterns or prints or colors. We play with negative space, we play with alternative grid work, we play with size and scale, asymmetry, all these things. And again, for me, I know it when I see it. It's really hard to define. So hopefully as I go through this, we'll be able to kind of pin that down a little bit more. I mean, I hope, right? Next up, QuiltCon. What is QuiltCon? Well, I guess we need to start with the whole fact that we're not just random modern quilters out there. A lot of us belong to this thing called the Modern Quilt Guilds. And there's a national chapter, there's the national organization, and then they have guilds throughout the country, throughout the world. Actually, that's a lie. We have guilds throughout the world. And then there's independent modern quilt guilds too. But for this episode, we're going to talk about the Modern Quilt Guild as we know it in the industry, the little modern quilty world. Every year, the Modern Quilt Guild has something called QuiltCon. And QuiltCon is kind of like, I don't know what there's got to be other things in other industries, but I'm drawing a complete blank. And I have a kid playing video games in the next room, which is just a little distracting. But anyway, QuiltCon. That's all we're here about today. That's all we care about today. QuiltCon is the destination for modern quilters every year. And normally it's a physical location. They normally do one on the West Coast and the East Coast, and they try to alternate, or West-ish coast, and they try to alternate so that it makes it easier for you to go depending on where you are geographically. Remember, there are people coming in from what we consider overseas, which is Germany, England, Australia. I know I've seen Australians there. So it's not just a United States thing. But we're headquartered in the United States, so that's obviously where we're going to have it for the majority of people. But this year, QuiltCon was virtual. It was called QuiltCon Together, and it was online everywhere, as they said. I loved it. I loved virtual QuiltCon. Now, part of that's because I'm not in the position right now to go to QuiltCon. It's not, first of all, there's the travel expense, the hotel expense, and then there's the fact that it happens during school break week, or at least that's what it's been in the past few years. It happens during spring, like the boys' midwinter break week, which means that I'd also have to pay for child's care, because I can't have my husband take off 2 days, and I'd probably need to pay for child care on the weekend because it's a full-time job for two parents. I can't imagine him being flying solo for 5 days and working full time. So anyway, there's a lot of costs involved with QuiltCon, in addition to the actual cost of going to QuiltCon. So this was my first experience, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I took lectures, I took workshops, I did some sewing related yoga. Yoga meant to work out some of the muscles that sewists use and abuse. And it was great. I mean, I did juggle kids in the middle of all of it, and there are a few posts on my Instagram that alluded to how frustrating I found taking QuiltCon with children at home, but I did it. And there's something to be said for taking QuiltCon classes in your own house, right down the street from your own local quilt shops, where you could go and buy all the things that you forgot you needed because you felt like you had more time to prepare, and then all of a sudden here it was. Two of my favorite classes were Libs Elliott. I'm a fangirl of Libs Elliott, so of course I'm going to love her class. Why Seams, Not Cry Seams. That was something that feels very overwhelming to me, and she broke it down and made it feel much more approachable and much more doable. And in the end, I actually have a pillowcase cover, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And then my other favorite was Latifah Safir's Put a Ring on It class. I love her patterns. I love her tools. You can actually see my work in progress. This is my Put a Ring on It quilt where it stands behind me right now. And again, thank goodness, like I could go back and watch what she said 3 times. I'm not sure in in-person class I would have been able to accomplish even this much. Because sometimes I need to hear things 2 or 3 times, which is really good information for if I do make it to a real QuiltCon, how I invest my time when I'm there. And then I took a couple of lectures. 2 of my favorites were Quilting as Therapy and Creativity Over Certainty, which were both so freeing and thought-provoking. Like, the classes were so reassuring, and it's amazing how helpful it is to hear people you consider experts, and they're pros, but to watch them sew and have them be like, oops, or sometimes it doesn't work. It's like, it's not just me. Or to have, like when I was struggling with one of the curved pieces, I would watch Latifah do it a couple of times, and then I'm like, she's sewing a lot slower than I am. And if she's done like how many curves at this point in her life, and she's sewing at that speed, I probably shouldn't try to be like a jackrabbit racing for the finish line here. So I found all of the classes I took were very reassuring and empowering in the I can do these things. But the lectures that I took, all of them, these were just 2 of my favorites that I found really thought-provoking, really freeing, really bringing me back on point for what I wanted to do this year in my personal quilting journey. Sometimes you just need somebody to say, yes, do it. I need that all the time, but I was just fully immersed in quilting this past weekend, and that was amazing and what I needed at this point. And my husband, bless him, took on a lot of the kid care, so I really could focus on the days he wasn't working, and got up early. I would stay up until 2 trying to fill my brain with as much knowledge as I could, and then crash. And I was very much on my own schedule, which is not what happens when you have 2 young kids, so it was lovely. And then, so not only were there lectures and classes and just a fire hose of knowledge and information being sprayed at you, there's also the component of Quilt Show, which is, I mean, it's like QuiltCon, Quilt Show. It's like the end game for a lot of modern quilters, like being juried in. You get bragging rights. It's pretty like, yes, please. The Quilt Show is amazing and it's inspirational, and there's a lot of, you see a lot of trends that are going on in the current quilting climate, but you also get a little taste of what people are playing with, exploring, and what might be coming next. And I think that I mean, it was just wonderful to like sit down with a glass of wine at 11 o'clock at night and flip through the quilts that were in this year's show. And this year, because it was virtual, they had little snippets of audio from some of the makers. Like you could choose, the makers who were juried in could choose to accompany their photos of the quilt fronts and quilt backs with audio explaining it. And I thought, that's one of those things I'm going to miss when QuiltCon is in person again, because I thought that was amazing to get to hear their voices or their thoughts or what they are thinking, or in some cases with the more social justice aimed quilts, they were using it to make a statement almost, but not in a bad way. That came out sounding. With the social justice, that's hard to say. Say that 3 times fast. The social justice quilts, they didn't talk about themselves. They talked about what the problem is that we need to fix. And that's powerful. I think a lot of modern quilters have used their quilting in ways to express their feelings. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but there is something there, so we'll revisit that in a later vlog. But the Quilt Show, it was great. Yes, it was online, so everything felt the same size, so I was missing a little bit of the scale. But at the same time, to be able to like walk through at 11 o'clock at night on my couch with a glass of wine and take the time to listen to the audio snippets if there were them, or see the backs of the quilts, which isn't always possible at quilt shows because they're hanging, on racks, and the back's usually not available to see. It was good. I think that fed my soul, my creative soul, in a way that I needed, particularly at this moment, in the gray winter days. And then, of course, I laugh because if you're a modern quilter and you're watching this, you know that part of the draw to QuiltCon is If you've gone to QuiltCon or you're a modern quilter and you know about QuiltCon, you know that one of the big draws for QuiltCon is the shopping. And even though it was online, they did not disappoint. There was vendor hall online, and you could go to each vendor's little virtual booth, and there's a little video uploaded from them, which was nice because it's nice to speak to the makers or the people behind the shops. So you could hear from them a little bit, and then there's resources and shopping links, obviously. And what was nice was there's several old favorites of mine there, but I also was introduced to some new to me places. And I'd love to share some of the things I bought, but the Postal Service is apparently holding them all hostage. Most of them were supposed to be delivered on Wednesday or Thursday. All their tracking information says in transit will be delivered late or unknown en route. My QuiltCon goodies are touring the US, I think. But maybe that will be next time. But so that was QuiltCon, the Modern Quilters annual event that we all look forward to. And there's strong feelings about it, as there is with any event. There's strong feelings. I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm gonna be sad next year when it's in Phoenix, and lots of things would have to happen for me to be able to go to Phoenix next year. That's just not in the cards for us. That's not in the cards for me. I'm gonna miss it. I'm kind of sad. But the year after that, it's supposed to be in Atlanta. So 2023 in Atlanta, maybe. That might work. And my kids might be actually... The oldest one will be independent. Almost independent. Not actually independent. But physically able to get himself to and from school. And the younger one will be on a bus if, the world returns to school buses being a thing, which we're not currently in that situation. So, assuming that things are not like this, 2023 might be a chance. So, I'm wondering if you guys can hear the dog barking in the background. It'll be interesting when I edit this to see if I can hear the dog barking in the background. So, what's on my WIP pile, my work in progress pile? Well, so first and foremost is put a ring on it, and you're only seeing about the top. You're seeing about a third of the quilt, I think, here. I'm doing a throw size, but what I love about these patterns, Latifah likes big quilts, oversized quilts, and I'm all for that because I like oversized quilts. So I think my throw is gonna be, well, if this is just a third of it, it's gonna be big. 70 by 80, maybe? I guess I should have checked that before I started. So there's this. I have my Thrive quilt from Susie Quilts on my long arm right now, and I'm hoping to sit down and do that. I'd say today, but that's a lie. Maybe this week. At least finish what I call the peaks and valleys of the quilt, so that I just have background to wrap up when I'm done. And I started the background before I got the long arm, and I started that on my domestic machine, so I might actually just go back to straight stitching that on my domestic and call it done. Because, as Angela Waters says, done is better than perfect. What else? My Tech Garden Quilt by Carly Porter is done. The top is done. If I can figure it out, I'm going to jump over and insert some video from this week where I was at the studio. If not, I'll see you in about 2 seconds right here. Hey gang, so I took the show on the road today because I basically outgrew my design wall for this quilt. So I decided that I would head over to the Stitch Studio where I have a membership and try to see how much of it I could get pieced on their design wall, on their machines. And then I can go back home and at least lay it out somewhere. This is the blessing and the curse of having your sewing machine in a spare room in your house, I guess, is because sometimes the space isn't quite big enough. But so I'm out today, which is why I'm all messed up, and in a few minutes I'll show you what I'm doing. And here's where I'm at. I'm pretty happy with my progress for the past couple of hours. I got 5 strips completely put together, 5 rows vertically, top to bottom. And I'm hoping to just dash through those last 2, and then I will be 2/3 of the way through this quilt top, which is not too shabby. I was so close to getting these rows done, and then I realized that I sewed this the wrong way, which means that I'm hungry and I need to stop for a little bit, and maybe I'll get it done before it's time to pick up from school, and maybe I won't, but I've made a lot of progress, and I'm just gonna say yay. I really feel like it's coming together and it looks so cute. Okay, more later. Okay. What else? I have a list. I've started to really hold myself accountable. I'm thinking about maybe taking Nova Star or maybe Starstorm. Nova Stars by Then Came June. Starstorm is by Victoria Finley Wolf. Both started, both abandoned. For both of them were frustrating me for different reasons. And I just decided to put them away for a little while instead of force my way through it, because that's not going to end well. So I think I might take one of those out and jump back into it and see if I can finish that up. I don't plan to long arm either of those. I plan to send them out for computer guided long arming because I don't know. Maybe it'll change, but I've lost my passion for both of them right now, and I'm kind of like, I want to see them through because there's something to be gained from both of them, but I'm not sure that I'm passionate enough to see it all the way through the long arming process. And this year is about reducing my whips. So if I can get it finished, let's just get it finished. But I also have the Portland Tote by Sotak. So I think that's how you say it, Sotak Handmade. And the Santorini Tote by Hungry Hippo. So Hungry Hippo. Her handle and her name are two different things, and I always mess it up. So one of those, I'll put it correctly in my notes below. But I've got the Santorini Tote, the Portland Tote, both of which I want to make. If for no other reason, it's places to store my whips. Oh my god, I've got problems. And then I've got some knitting. I've hit a snag where I'm just not passionate about knitting right now. I don't know why. So I've got my Gossamer Twist sweater. And all I have is the sleeves. I'm so close and yet so emotionally far from that. And then I'm knitting the Rouleed scarf. Did I pronounce that right? I don't know. Rouleed scarf. Which, if you know me in real life, you know that I like big blocks, I like big needles. And that's not really tiny. It feels like I'm knitting with toothpicks. I know I'm not, but it feels that way. It's really tiny. I don't even know what it is, and I shouldn't even look because that will be a stalling point. But that's my car project. So it sits in a little pouch in my front seat, and because we're at this place where I have to pick up kids and drop kids off, and you have to get to each place early at pickup because otherwise you can't find parking on the streets. I spend a lot of time sitting in my car waiting for my kids. So that's my car project. So it's slow going because it's only little stitches of time, and sometimes I choose to use that time to, doom scroll. Choices. Some are good, some are bad. I think that's it. I feel like I've talked for a really long time this morning, so hopefully once I edit this, the weird breaks out. It won't be quite so overwhelming for you guys on the flip side, because I don't know. I feel like I've talked for a really long time. And I'm not quite editing savvy enough to edit it down. So that's not all jumpy. working on it. I'm also working on the introduction, that little animation that shows up in the beginning. And next time I'm going to work on audio as well, so it's a little clearer. And hopefully I'll record when there's not a child in the other room gaming, but you know, you do what you gotta do. It's also ridiculously bright in this room for whatever reason today, so I apologize for that too. But now I'm done apologizing. So that's it. Modern quilting, how I define it. And then perhaps the destination for all modern quilters every year, QuiltCon. They kind of go together. They both happened, you know, that's what's happening right now in my world. So I'm going to sign off for now. I hope to be back in about a week. We'll see. In the meantime, quilt on, drink up.